Now, here's the first of our debuts. Coming in at number 39, here's the first hit for a 16-year-old singer from Long Island, New York. She's Debbie Gibson, and she sings Only in My Dreams.
It was only in my dreams.
Only in My Dreams, a real-life hit for 16-year-old Debbie Gibson. Her first hit record debuts at number 39 as the countdown rocks on.
Casey's Coast to Coast. American Top 40.
These are the hits ranked by Billboard magazine. And at number 18, we have a light dance pop hit by a very serious young woman. How serious? Well, 17-year-old Debbie Gibson insists that her work is even more important than boys. Looks like the work's paid off, too. Her second top 40 hit climbs 6 notches this week to 18. Shake Your Love. That song's been shaking on the chart for 4 weeks now. Shake Your Love by Debbie Gibson. She climbs 6 notches to number 18 on American Top 40.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
Well, now we're up to the artist who struggled ever since she was 12 years old to get a hit song. And now she's finally made it. Finally at the ripe old age of 16. That precocious girl is Debbie Gibson. And her musical roots date way back to when she was only 4 years old. Debbie grew up on Long Island, New York. Before she even started kindergarten, she was banging around on the family piano. And that's when Mom and Dad Gibson discovered that their 4-year-old daughter had absolute perfect pitch. She could hear any note and know exactly what it was. So the music lessons started immediately. And Debbie started writing songs. By the time she was 12, she thought she was ready to take a shot at the music business. So she wrote a song, entered in a song contest, and won $1,000. Now, Debbie didn't spend that money on Barbie dolls. Oh, no. This 12-year-old bought a 4-track tape deck so she could record all those songs she was writing. She set up a studio in the garage and made her mother park in the driveway. By the time Debbie was 16 years old, she recorded about 150 songs that she'd written herself. She had an agent, and she submitted 30 of her songs to Atlantic Records. Well, they rejected him. But Debbie didn't let that get her down. She went back to her garage to write some more. And that's when she found an old tape with a song on it she'd written back when she was just 13 years old. A song called Only in My Dreams. Debbie submitted the song along with a dozen others to Atlantic Records one more time. This time they signed her. 16-year-old Debbie Gibson's first album, Out of the Blue, came out this past week. And the first hit off that album is the one that she wrote when she was 13 years old. At number 21, Debbie Gibson with Only in My Dreams. Only in My Dreams by teenager Debbie Gibson from Long Island, New York. The song she wrote is at number 21 this week, taking a 3-notch jump. American Top 40s heard in the 50 states and around the world every week on great radio stations like the superstation KOPR 94.1 FM, Butte, Montana. Up next is a song that came from a kindergarten class. That's right, it was written by 17-year-old pop star Debbie Gibson. She says, quote, "When I was 5, I liked this guy in kindergarten. Then he moved away. Then when I was 16, I saw him again. He just kind of appeared out of the blue. We started going out, and that's how I got the idea for the song." End of quote. Here it is, the song that started out as a kindergarten romance. At number 24, Debbie Gibson with Out of the Blue. Out of the Blue. Teenager Debbie Gibson singing that one, wrote it and co-produced it as well. Up a strong 9 notches to number 24. 23 big ones to number 1 as the countdown continues.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
We have 2 teen newcomers, and we've heard from 16-year-old Tiffany earlier. Now, here's her elder, a 17-year-old who's been writing songs for more than half her life. Her first song was about going to school.
I wrote my first song when I was 5, and it was called Make Sure You Know Your Classroom. It was about going into kindergarten. And I remember writing that, too, sitting on the couch, and I was kind of doing it in front of my family and saying, okay, make sure you know your classroom, and writing it. But I was sitting with the keyboard with the Casio, and I started just picking out a tune, and I went do 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 do. Yeah, it's a good feeling when you write a song, because I wouldn't like to have to depend on other people for my material.
And Debbie Gibson doesn't have to. The 38th top newcomer writes and sings her own songs, like Only in My Dreams. Debbie Gibson, Only in My Dreams. A 17-year-old from New York wrote that one and her other hits as well, and they've made her the 38th most popular new artist. I'm Casey Kasem, and these are the 40 top newcomers of the 80s with the biggest hits on the Billboard chart.
The hits from coast to coast.
Now, the story of the man who started his new career as a manager by taking on a client who was not only a complete unknown, she was just a kid, only 12 years old. The story begins in New York with a man named Doug Breitbart. He worked as an entertainment lawyer, but he wanted to switch careers. He wanted to manage performers. Well, one day, Doug got a phone call from the parents of a young girl. She was 12 years old, she lived in Long Island, and she wrote and sang her own songs. She'd been singing and writing songs since she was just 5 years old. Well, Doug was intrigued, but unsure. Didn't seem like a very sure bet. But this girl and her parents kept after him. Her mother would tell him, "You don't understand. I live with this kid. She has a lot of energy and nonstop dedication to what she does." Well, after some convincing, Doug took the girl on as his client. Next, it was his turn to do the convincing. Doug worked on record companies, tried to get them interested in signing his client. It was not an easy sell. Finally, after 3 years, Doug got a nibble from Atlantic Records. But they weren't gung-ho over this 15-year-old. They approached the deal cautiously, saying, "Okay, we'll release one of your songs as a 12-inch single." The song Atlantic Records released was called Only in My Dreams, and it was a smash. Went to number 4. People started asking, why hasn't this girl released an album? So Atlantic signed an album deal and got behind this new star. This new star named Debbie Gibson. The girl Doug Breitbart agreed to manage when she was only 12 years old. A risk that has paid off 5 years later with 4 consecutive top 10 hits. Here's Debbie's latest at number 6, Foolish Beat. From Out of the Blue, the album that is, that's the 4th consecutive top 40 hit and 4th consecutive top 10er for Debbie Gibson. Song's called Foolish Beat, and it moves up a notch this week to number 6 as the countdown rolls on.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
This is American Top 40, here with the eerie grin of the Shadoe. Now we're up to the singer who's a hit song psychic. Well, she's not exactly clairvoyant, but last year she did predict she'd have 5 top 40 hits from her debut album, and she even named which songs they'd be. And now everything she has said has come to pass. You can be a skeptic if you want, but the fact remains, everything the 17-year-old Debbie Gibson predicted has come true. Eerie, huh? What's her psychic secret? Astrology? Tarot cards? No. Market research. Yes, Debbie tests all her songs before she records them. She tests them by playing the songs for family and friends. And she keeps very detailed records of each person's reaction to every song. Last year, Debbie was choosing material for her debut album, Out of the Blue. She started with a batch of 40 songs, and she used her panel of family and friends to narrow the list down to about 20. Then she and her producers narrowed it down to 10 songs, which were included on the album. Next, she referred back to the results of her family and friends tests, pinpointed the songs that scored the highest, and predicted that those would be the hits. Not exactly a crystal ball, but hey, it works. Debbie said there would be a total of 5 hits, beginning with Only in My Dreams, then Shake Your Love, Out of the Blue, and then Foolish Beat, which all made the top 5. Though she didn't name chart positions, that made her 4 for 4, and now the 5th song she foresaw as a hit, the song called Staying Together, debuts this week in the countdown. Oh, gives you chills, doesn't it, boys and girls? The pop music mystic is 5 for 5. Debbie Gibson debuting at number 34 with Staying Together. Woo! Staying Together, the 5th hit from the debut album by Debbie Gibson, Out of the Blue. Her new song comes in at number 34 this week, the week's highest debut.
The hits from coast to coast.
You're listening to American Top 40, and now we're up to the love song written by a teenage star who's never even been in love. That's what 18-year-old Debbie Gibson from Long Island says. She's been working on her music career since she was about 5 years old, and when she was 16, she started hitting the charts. She's been so involved with music, she hasn't even had time for boys or dating. And still, Debbie's had 6 top 40 hits without much first-hand romance experience for inspiration. But she's a great researcher. Debbie will grab a pencil and a pad of paper, plop herself in front of the television, and take notes. And she has another resource, the love lives of her 2 older sisters, Karen and Michelle. Debbie interrogates them about their boyfriends. The moment they come home from a date, Debbie will ask them, well, what happened? Karen and Michelle have tolerated their little sister, and Debbie keeps writing on her notepads. She says she's written over 300 songs, mainly because of TV and her sisters. Well, here's the latest love song from the star who hasn't even been in love yet, but who knows what this Valentine's Day will bring, huh? This week, Debbie Gibson has the biggest mover in the countdown, up 9 notches to number 12, Lost in Your Eyes. That's the first hit from her new album, Electric Youth, Lost in Your Eyes. Debbie Gibson leaping up from number 21 to number 12. The top 11 hits in the USA are just on the horizon as the countdown continues.
Casey's Top 40.
Now we're up to a teenage superstar who found her dream car looking out her hotel window. When Debbie Gibson turned 18 last August, like a lot of teenagers, her first official act was to take her driving test and get a license. That done, Debbie set out to find the perfect first car. And she did it the same way she writes her hit songs. She thought about it a lot, changed her mind, and kept looking until she found the right one. Debbie told us that at first she thought she'd get a pink Cadillac. But on a trip to Los Angeles, she began to waver. There were so many cool cars she'd seen driving around the streets, she didn't know what to go for. Then one day, she was standing at her hotel window just thinking about things when suddenly she saw the car of her dreams drive up. It was a mint green and white 1957 Ford Fairlane convertible. Debbie told us she couldn't believe it. She had a model of that car sitting on a table near her bed at home. It was her perfect car. So she called down to the desk to ask whose car it was and discovered the car belonged to Julian Lennon. Since he was on the same record label as Debbie, she got in touch with him, told him she was in love with his car, and worked out a deal. Debbie says, quote, he gave me the whole lowdown on what was wrong with it. It needed a lot of stuff fixed, but it's perfect now. How perfect? Well, Debbie says, I drive around in it all the time. I just love it. I even took it to a drive-through window the other day. People were staring at it like they'd never seen anything so big. But to me, there's nothing like the old cars. So if you see a teenager driving around in a green and white Ford Fairlane convertible, give her a wave. It just may be Debbie Gibson. After all, how many 1957 green and white convertibles are there these days? Now, driving up 6 notches on Highway 40, here's Debbie Gibson's third big hit of 1989. At number 26 this week, No More Rhyme. Climbing 6 notches to number 26. That's No More Rhyme from Debbie Gibson, a teenager who got her start in music when she was just 5 years old.
Casey's Top 40.